Welcome back to 843 TV. I'm now joined by Dr. Victor Thompson, who is an associate professor and director for the Center of Archaeological Sciences with the Department of Anthropology at the University of Georgia. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you having me here.
Absolutely. So one of the reasons you're here is that you're working on the Santa Elena site. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. Fantastic site.
Is that right?
Oh, it's one of the most wonderful sites I've ever worked on.
Is that right?
It's true, yeah.
And how long have you been working at the Santa Elena site?
This is our third trip here, and it started a little over a year ago.
Okay.
And it was really sort of serendipitous.
Yeah?
Yes. My colleague, Dr. Chester Prater from the University of South Carolina, well, he's been working here, he's been working at Santa Elena for longer than Santa Elena existed. The occupation, not,
right.
He wasn't here, in the 15th, 60s.
He wasn't here
right.
in the 16th century. Right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we've interviewed Dr. Prater on this show before, and he was very articulate and shed a lot of light on what y'all are doing out there. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about your role at the Santa Elena site?
Yeah, well, it's sort of the 21st century meets the 16th century with my role. I'm an archaeologist, just like Dr. Prater. I mean, I go out and I do what you typically think of as what an archaeologist does.
Right.
Digs with a shovel and sift through the soil to look for artifacts. And
yeah.
But in addition to that, one of the specialties I have is in remote sensing, and particularly ground-based remote sensing, or what we call shallow geophysics. And so these are a suite of geophysical methods that allow us to image the subsurface to get a sense of basically what's there without even having to dig. And these technologies have really come along. They're old technologies, but within, I'd say, the past 10 years or so, our ability to process and refine and see what we're looking at underneath that subsurface through the use of these methods has advanced considerably. So in essence, some of the things we're doing is like ground penetrating radar. We use electrical resistivity. We use a magnetometer, which is sort of like a metal detector on steroids.
Right, yeah, that
almost.
sounded a little bit like a metal detector as you were describing it.
But all these things work on basically the same principle. They're trying to detect the signal to the noise. So if you have a lot of noise, it's hard to see the signal. And the signal we're after is that 16th century signal.
Right.
The buildings, structures, wells, any kind of modification that was done at the time that Santa Elena was occupied.
Okay. And does that 16th century noise sound different than, say, a rock from yesterday?
It can. It can. Rocks don't usually position themselves in a square outline, so there's that. Right. So when we have nice right angles and things like that, we can say, okay, this is a human-induced disturbance rather than something that's natural.
Gotcha.
Now, what makes Santa Elena so wonderful to do this work at is that you really have to have ideal conditions, right? Meaning, a lot of the places I've worked and done this is, it's a jungle.
Right.
It's not a golf course.
Right.
And so it's been really nice working at Santa Elena because the quality of the data is spectacular because, it's this manicured golf course and we can really know exactly where we're looking and mapping and imaging, and we don't have to fight the trees and the salt palmettos and things like that.
Yeah.
And we can do a really large area.
Very cool.
And the bigger the picture that we get, the better we are able to understand what those features are, if it's a Spanish feature versus a Marine Corps feature,
right,
a little bit later on, or plantation features.
And through this technology, you're able to identify whether that is a 16th century feature or not, kind of.
Well, to a certain extent. Now, the other wonderful thing about Santa Elena is that we have documents and descriptions and things like that.
Yeah.
So we can couple the documents and the descriptions of Santa Elena and what went on there with the archaeology that Dr. DePratter and Dr. South had done previously with these new instruments. So we're almost melding all these different types of data together to, make a more broader, more accurate picture of what the whole landscape looked like. Instead of, when you dig, you have, maybe a couple of feet. We tend to work in meters, but metric, but a couple of feet by 3 feet by a 3 feet hole.
Yeah.
It's really just it's less than 1% of what went on.
Right.
And so, how do you go from really less than 0.01%, to extrapolating? And this helps to put all that in context.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. So I understand that there's a field school taking place at the Santa Elena site this summer. Can you tell us a little bit of information about the field school?
Sure, yeah. I think one of my favorite things to do is to teach archaeology field school, because I get to take students down and they're just blown away. And particularly to be able to work on a site like Santa Elena, where we have so much background and so much knowledge about already, is it puts them, at those sort of leading edge of discovery, and they enjoy being a part of it. They're excited to learn. So I do this every year. So I take students into the field in the summer. They get course credit for it, and they learn to live together. They learn to work together,
right?
And they learn how to do archaeology, as well as utilize some of these sort of newer technologies that are becoming more widespread in archaeology now. But
experiential learning at its best, right?
Oh, this is the textbook definition of experiential learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. And I understand that the field school is funded by the Santa Elena Foundation. Would you like to say to the community members who have supported the foundation and the effort in the greater Beaufort area?
So the past belongs to everyone.
Right.
And for us to do our job, archaeology, unfortunately, is pretty expensive. I would say, though, you get a lot of bang for your buck, right?
Yeah.
And it's through foundations like the Santa Elena Foundation that we're actually able to do this. And without that support, we wouldn't know these things that are now coming to light. So it just can't be done without support of people like you have here. And in addition, to providing financial support, they get everyone excited about this, and everyone should be excited about this, because this is a critical moment in the history of what would become the United States. And it's sort of we're getting the word out again. They're getting the word out again.
Very cool.
So
it's very exciting stuff.
Really, really great stuff, and I couldn't be more thankful or appreciative to the Santa Elena Foundation for their support. It's just, we couldn't do it without them.
Fantastic. Dr. Thompson, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. And stick around for more 843 TV.